Not much new here. That's the conclusion by Democrats on the House Oversight Committee after their initial review of more than 33,000 pages of Epstein documents released by the DOJ. And it found only 3% contain any new information. A DOJ spokesperson said it provided more than was ever requested. Joining us now, ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, California Democrat Robert Garcia. It's good to have you back on the show, Congressman. What do you believe is new here, and has it opened any new lanes of the investigation?
Well, first, that statement made by that spokesperson is just a complete fabrication. We received 33,000 pages of documents from the Epstein files. Of those 33,000 pages, 97% of them were essentially records that were already in the public domain. These are court documents, reports, records that have been accessible to the public now for, in some cases, for many, many months. And so not a lot of new information. There were some flight logs that were additional and new. About 1,000 pages of the 33,000 pages were actually new documents, of which, of course, we're reviewing. But we spent the weekend, our committee and our team, just going through that entire first batch. And it's clear that this cover-up by the White House and the DOJ continues. The subpoena, which was bipartisan, and that Democrats forced Republicans to vote on, made it clear that we wanted the full, unredacted Epstein files, and the White House and the DOJ continue to stall. And the question must be asked, what are they hiding?
So do you have a sense of what you think that is, and what, being in the minority, we talk about this all the time, what options do you have to get more transparency?
Well, the White House and DOJ have no options than to just release all the files. I mean, they're dragging their feet. They have said they're going to release all of them to us. The fact that they gave us this first kind of tranche of documents in a way that they wanted to put them out, and the same day that they kind of released the Ghislaine Maxwell transcript, they're clearly trying to divert attention. They're trying to create distractions. They know that the American public is focused on justice for these victims, that they know that the American public understand and don't know why Donald Trump flip-flopped from a campaign promise to where we are now. Let's remind everyone, Pam Bondi, the AG, said that the Epstein files were on her desk, that they were ready to go. And then they completely changed course. The documents that we want are the client list, folks that were involved in the abuse. We want to ensure that people that actually caused harm to these young women and girls actually face accountability. And we want to understand what Jeffrey Epstein was doing with all of these connections that he had built around the world and in our country. So that's what we're looking for. We won't stop till we get the full files.
So whether it is, the documents or a Maxwell interview, have you heard anything, even behind scenes, from your Republican colleagues that they have any level of frustration surrounding this?
There is some frustration. I mean, for example, there's members of the committee, Republicans, some have gone public, that they don't understand why, for example, we haven't subpoenaed Alex Acosta. Alex Acosta, of course, was the one that put together that original Jeffrey Epstein deal that he received. He probably knows more about this case than almost anyone. He went on to become Trump's Secretary of Labor, as we all know. And so there are some Republicans that want more information, but the reality is that they are stonewalling. Mike Johnson is playing a cover-up game. He has no interest in actually releasing these files. The only reason we're getting some type of disclosure is because Democrats forced it on the committee. And so the question has to be continued to be asked. What are they hiding? Why aren't they releasing the files? We've said we don't care who is impacted, how powerful they are, what party they're from. If you've caused harm to young girls, if you have helped these horrific people like Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, who are essentially sex traffickers and pedophiles, we should hold these folks accountable, and it's time to stop this cover-up.
As you well know, Congressman, the Supreme Court still has to decide whether it will review Maxwell's sex offender conviction. So the Oversight Committee postponed its deposition of Maxwell, I think at least until mid-October, if I'm right. Does that make sense to you, to wait to see what the Supreme Court does?
Absolutely not. I mean, that decision, of course, was made by James Comer and the House Republicans who unfortunately hold the majority. They can make these decisions. We wanted to get Ghislaine Maxwell in immediately. And what they ended up doing is they created a smokescreen. Instead of Ghislaine Maxwell coming in front of a bipartisan group of members of Congress to be asked tough questions and to be asked questions that could get answers, they delay her deposition and instead have the Deputy Attorney General or Trump's former personal lawyer, which Todd Blanche was, literally Donald Trump's personal lawyer who becomes the Deputy AG. He becomes the person asking Ghislaine Maxwell the questions. Then she gets moved to a less secure prison for no reason that has yet to be explained by anyone. And so this snowball continues. But one thing is clear is that the American public is focused on this issue and they want answers and they feel betrayed by Donald Trump. And if Donald Trump's going to lie to them about this issue, he's going to continue to lie to them about their health care, about the economy, about lowering costs. And this just goes straight to the idea that Donald Trump and his administration are involved not just in a cover-up, but in corruption and in major government corruption. And we need to get the truth out there.
Well, assuming that Ghislaine Maxwell at some point does come before your committee, do you have any expectation that you'll get the answers you want from her?
Well, hey, look, that's going to be up to her. First, we got to be clear. Ghislaine Maxwell is a convicted sex trafficker. She's a horrific person who's been convicted of horrible crimes and has caused enormous violence to children and to young girls. And so what she says has to be taken into account with the knowledge that she also wants a pardon.
No, I just said we always have to be on the ready.
Fair enough. I wanted to ask you about the idea that this is a distraction. I know it's obviously a distraction for Donald Trump, who wants to keep the attention away from his shortcomings and his failures. But the people in D.C. tonight are going to have armed guards, armed National Guard members on their streets. They're going to wake up tomorrow morning, either try to get to work with a sense of fear if they have to go through a checkpoint or having an interaction with an armed soldier on their street. Probably not going to feel like a political distraction for them. It's their reality in the morning. What do you make of that reality that has now befallen this nation's capital?
Well, of course, it's a frightening reality. And as I've said, it's reminiscent of New York under Mayor Giuliani with stop and frisk policies. Even my own city of Boston with stop and frisk in the wake of the Charles Stewart murder. My staff live and work in D.C. Obviously, as a member of Congress, I spend my time in D.C. My godchildren live in D.C. They are young Black boys. And I fear for them in this targeting, in this surveillance, in this militarized state, in this federal takeover. Again, none of it is being done in the name of public safety. Truly, it has everything to do with control and intimidation. And it's one more action in this extremist march towards authoritarianism. But again, it is a strategic distraction and deflection from those things that Donald Trump campaigned on and said that he cared about and would do something about. And that includes the Epstein files. And I'm grateful to Congresswoman Summer Lee, our ranking member on the federal law enforcement subcommittee and oversight, who developed a strategy in the midst of this hearing on child trafficking to call out their hypocrisy that forced a subpoena to the DOJ. But they are not in compliance. They have violated that binding congressional subpoena by sending us a batch of files instead of the complete Epstein files, unredacted, except for the names of the 20+ victims who came forward. And that's who I do not want to get lost in this. As a survivor myself of childhood sexual abuse and campus sexual assault, who's done the work of survivors justice for a long time, I need for people to not think of the survivors in some abstract way. These are survivors who are adults now, who were children, many of them in middle school and high school, who were aspiring artists and models. They've been robbed of their dreams. They've had their bodies violated. They've had their rights violated. And as I'm in regular communication with many of the victims, the survivors, and their legal counsel, I know that what they define this as is an institutional betrayal. And it just continues to go on.
Congresswoman, you and 15 of your Democratic colleagues have called for a congressional hearing so that the victims, the survivors, can share their stories and talk about what happened with, in their experience with the Epstein sex trafficking ring. Do you think that this will happen? Do you think there will be a congressional hearing?
Well, I'm leading that fight. I'm grateful for my colleagues who joined me in demanding a hearing in the Committee on Oversight and Reform. The great Elijah Cummings reminds us that the role of the Committee on Oversight and Reform is to be an efficient and effective pursuit of the truth. And we cannot have the truth unless we have a comprehensive lay of the land of how far the reach goes, how deep the harm went. And you need to center the survivors and hear their stories along with the Epstein files completely unredacted in order to do that. You know, we need to understand who else could be involved, who else were enablers in this predator Ponzi scheme that is protecting the powerful and the privileged. And that is what the Republicans are doing, but that's what they've always done. They are shielding and protecting predators. They did it with Jim Jordan. They did it with Matt Gaetz. They've done it with Donald Trump. And they're doing it now with Epstein and Maxwell. Enough is enough. Justice delayed is justice denied. These survivors deserve so much more. And this is not only about the Epstein survivors. This is about our survivor community. They deserve transparency, they deserve justice, and they deserve healing, and they need to be heard. And I will continue to demand a hearing in the Committee on Oversight and Reform and to fight for it until it happens.
So we know that you and your colleagues, you've only received a tiny fraction of the documents that you were hoping for. But have you started to learn anything? Is there something in the files you've received that has surprised you, changed the way you see this case, or, you know, added a name to the list of folks, you know, lawmakers might want to subpoena in the future?
The committee staff and my personal staff continue to comb through these some 33,000 pages of documents. Again, this batch, which flies in the face of the congressional subpoena.
People in Congress aren't happy. They're not happy because Donald Trump is acting like a tyrant, and the information they've been given around Epstein isn't enough. And whether on the tyrant stuff, I got to be honest, it's pretty partisan. Most Republicans, not every Republican. You have someone like Massey coming out and saying, you know, this is a violation of the principle of American use of force, which is that the military, and that should include the National Guard really as well, it isn't to be used to police citizens. That's why you have police, right? It's a serious overreach and violation of civil liberty. But for the most part, Republicans are fine with that. But with the Epstein stuff, a lot of people are mad because they feel like they're being lied to. A lot of Republicans really did sincerely believe, we can laugh at them, but they sincerely believed that Donald was going to release the Epstein files. They sincerely believed that he was going to get to the bottom of it, that when Pam Bondi said, I got the files, they're on my desk, and I brought all these right-wing influencers, and here are the binders they have, a lot of Republican members of Congress sincerely, again, we can laugh at them, they sincerely believed the list was coming, the transparency was coming, blah, 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 blah. And then it didn't. And then it became very clear very quickly, even to Republicans, that the reason it's not being released is because at some point Pam Bondi told Trump, you're in there, sir. Now, we don't know the exact details of what's in there, what he did in there. Is it just that because he was friends with Epstein, he was around him a lot, and of course it's going to be mentioned in any deep dive into his life? Or was it that Donald saw some of the bad stuff happening, didn't participate, but never spoke up? Or, of course, the worst case scenario, that he was, you know, a willing partner every step of the way for every evil thing that Epstein did. That's possible, but we don't have proof for that. But that's what gets the minds racing. And so Congress is not happy. They're not happy because they ultimately feel that Donald Trump is not only hiding a dark truth, but that also he's making their jobs harder in their home districts.